Welcome to the ThunderCast, your martial athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. Links to all of our social media outlets are in the description to every episode of the ThunderCast. Also is a link to thundercast.online, your another online home to all things ThunderCast. There's a lot of cool articles that go up there on a regular basis. If you're interested in contributing to the ThunderCast, shoot Russ a DM at Russ Livingood, or you can shoot a DM to at ThunderCast_pod. Both ways will make it to Russ eventually. So we're looking for, fan perspectives on things. If you're interested in doing that type of thing, then give us a shout and we'll see what's up. Russ, the series of position group breakdowns continues this week, the fan favorite position group breakdowns. This week, it's the offensive line. One of the more, big time changes, almost wholesale changes of all position groups. And we're going to get into all of that, of course, and everything else that's been going on with Herd Athletics. But let's get a quick word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
I am intrigued to get into the position group breakdowns this week. Offensive line, of course, is one that we both have circled and feel like it's going to be integral, more so than in normal years because of all the change that is afoot with the Herd offensive side of the football. But before we can get into position group breakdowns, we have to get give me at least 5 things every Herd fan needs to know this week.
Yeah, as we go into what is looking like our final episode of Season 3, we have 8 things every Herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by Ignite Link, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. Number 1, Telly Lockett and Bob Shoup have been promoted. Lockett is now adding associate head coach as a title, and Shoup adds assistant head coach.
I saw this first of all, and I think it's great because it's just it's like it's a little bump for a job well done, right? And some fans are like, really, we need this? We need an associate head coach and an assistant head coach? Well, yeah, because these things, along with a little bit of added title, generally come with a little bit of a pay bump. And of all the coaches that have done a really good job since Coach Huff has been here, Telly Lockett has got to be at the top of the assistant coaches that has done a fabulous job. I mean, look at the back production that we've had since he's been here. Look at the recruiting that we've had. Pulled Kalen Labron out of the portal, and yeah, they took a chance, but the talent was apparent from week 1, and what the development of Rasheen Ali, the evolution of Ethan Payne, a lot of these other young backs that we're expecting to contribute in a larger way this year, I think it just is merited, right? And honestly, I'm still befuddled of how he has remained with the Herd as our coaches have gotten picked off and taken other jobs. Telly Lockett has remained here and has just continued to be one of the top 2 assistant coaches to perform annually. And when we were talking about Bob Shoup during the coaching staff position group breakdown episode, the wealth of knowledge that's there, the big time stops, the defensive coordinator stopped Penn State, Tennessee, Mississippi State, right? And also now he's safeties coach with the Herd. He was safeties coach with Michigan. I mean, the pedigree is unbelievable. The stops are unbelievable. So these are just kind of like a thank you for being the coach that you are. And I have nothing wrong with any of this stuff. I don't know why anybody would have a problem with it. These are just things that help retain a coach on your staff.
Katie, I haven't done this in a long time, but I see it over here in the floor, and I'm going to reach down. I'm going to grab my old speculation hat. Throw it on right here. Again, we all know what happens when I have the speculation hat on. This is not coming from anything. These 2 are going to be hot commodities. These 2 are definitely going to be hot commodities where rumblings are going around, and by the time this episode airs, it could already have happened that the NCAA says, you know what, there's no longer a limit on coaches. And you know what's going to happen? The big P5 schools are going to say, I'll throw that guy in there as a recruiting coordinator. I'll throw that guy in as this, and I'll put him as, now we've got 5 defensive back coaches and stuff like that. I think this is a good move, both to reward these two, but also to protect and hedge your bets a little bit, to where someone else wants to come along, you know, they're going to have to pay a little bit more. It gives them a little bit of, hey, we appreciate what you've done. We want you to stay here. And yeah, I 100% think Telly Lockett is he's one of those guys that every year I just goes, this is the year that someone is going to take Telly Lockett, because it's not just the development of the running backs, but people come here to play for him.
Yeah. He is known in South Florida. Very well known in South. And that's a honey hole in recruiting. Everybody knows that. So absolutely. I'm with you. Why? How does this continue? He must like it here, right? He must like the situation at Marshall. He obviously has a good relationship with Coach Huff and likes the scenario here. So we are just blessed that he remains on staff, right? It's inevitable. It's inevitable. At some point, all coaches either get hired away or they get fired, right? And Telly Lockett is not anywhere close to being on that, well, this could be his last season for a bad reason type of thing. It's completely 180. And, you know, it's like, well, any minute now, I feel like that dude could get hired away.
Now, I've still got the old speculation hat on. I haven't thrown it away yet. And I'm going to say another thing is, this is often, from what I've seen, this is often a move to set up a coach for their next job at another school. That if it is looking like in the next, I'm not saying year, but in the next 3 to 5 years, and they've only been a position coach or something in their most recent stop, but they have that title on there as well, that goes a long way. You know, Coach Huff himself had a similar title down at Alabama, you know, and I just think that this is all about rewarding those coaches for a job well done. Hopefully it's financially as well, that this came with a pay bump. But, you know, this is one of those, we want you here, but we also appreciate you, and we're hoping that this will help you for the rest of your career as well, adding these titles.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think we're kind of both right on, but I'm just going to.
That's what we do here, right?
We never make mistakes on this show.
Never make a mistake. No assumptions. All right, we're going to move on to number 2. There are new kits coming for men's and women's soccer. They will debut at a July the 18th event at the Market downtown in Huntington. If you buy a ticket to the event for $100, you will also receive a free replica jersey. Now, the deadline has passed to get that order in to guarantee that you will have the jersey there at the event. They're still going to take those orders, the best of my knowledge. But you could reach out to the Big Green. You can reach out to Ryan Crisp, make sure that you can still get in on that. But I am fairly certain you can still pay the $100, get the replica jersey. They just right now can't guarantee it that it would be here in time for that event if you haven't already placed your order.
Yeah. I'll tell you what they should have done is they should have just sent 2 to us, and we could have debuted them at the same time. And, you know, I mean, I'm just saying, it's not like I don't want to wear cool Marshall shit every day of my life.
You still wear a schmedium?
No, I'm up to a schmarge now.
No longer on the Jason Grayson fitness program.
No, I've settled into a size large, which is what I prefer. So, but no, this is cool, man. I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what's the new look going to look like, right? Because a lot of folks really like the stripes. The green and white were great, but man, the black jerseys were really awesome. I mean, they were really nice. And I'm a guy who really, really likes the Kelly green and white combo. I mean, I like our black combos too, but man, there's just something about Kelly green and white that just does it for me, you know? But man, those black jerseys were awesome. So I'm intrigued. I wonder what they're going to do. Is this going to be more of a, I don't know how you phrase it. Is it more of a, like an active type design with stripes or something like that? Or is it just going to be more of a cleaner look with a solid jersey and maybe just, you know, a larger crest? Or I'm just curious.
I just hope at some point on there it says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," on somewhere on there. No, I just think that this is one of those things that when you are competing for NCAA championships year in, year out and everything, that's one of those things that, you just get the fresh look every now and
Got
then.
to.
And, I grew up a Kentucky basketball fan, being in this geographical area and stuff like that. And it seemed like every year in the mid 90s to late 90s, it was just a new uniform. Sometimes not just every season, sometimes mid season they would get a uniform change.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that, I'm sitting here now is like, yeah, it's that classic look, but it's time for a redesign. And that also allows you to break out that classic now,
Right.
as a bit of a throwback, even if it's only 3-4 years old,
Well, you have to be able to get to the point to where you retire that look, so the clock does start ticking on a throwback look. And
exactly.
when you're looking at 2021, I mean, we're already in 2024, heading into 2025. 2031 will not be that far away, and you'll be
Right.
looking at a 10-year anniversary of the first national championship. You've got to be thinking, right, a throwback game will be tossed out at that point, but the clock has to start ticking on that. You can't be wearing that up to like 2027. And then try to do a throwback look 3 years later. It ain't gonna work.
Here's the throwback to how it looked like last month.
Right? Yeah. Remember that? That was awesome. I tell you what. Here's what I hope they don't do. You were talking about Kentucky basketball. Let's hope they don't do the all denim looking. Remember that? Oh my god.
That was in my head. I think that was the mid-season debut. It was either that was replaced mid-season or that was brought in mid-season. But when it happened, I was just like, obviously in retrospect, I can think about on Super Troopers with the
right. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, he looked like the president CEO of Levi Strauss. But I really hope that this continues to where, we say, hey, we've invested all this in our soccer program and it's given us so much back and everything, that we can have these new uniforms, that we will be where all the players are like, man, that's the team right there. They're always having a fresh look and all that. So,
yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to number 3. These next couple are some events that are coming up. Number 3, the inaugural Be Her, a celebration of women in sports. It's a Big Green member-exclusive event on July 21st in Ironton. Elise Smith and Cindy Dawson-Carlisle, an executive at Foot Locker, will be the guest speakers. Tickets are $100 and include brunch and beverages. All proceeds benefit female student athletes at Marshall.
So this isn't a I've seen this, but I haven't read the release. This isn't like exclusively for women and women in sports, right?
Nope.
It's anybody can go as long as you're a Big Green member. Right. Okay. Well, that's cool, because I think it's pretty neat that we're going to have a, you've got a marquee keynote speaker of somebody at a company as large as Foot Locker. That's sports related, let's face it. And then the proceeds for all that are going to go directly to our women's sports program. That's awesome, man. It's just that's super cool. So that we know that funding is never going to be 50-50, because it's just not fair to be 50-50, because like the football program's bills are so high, it just can't be that way.
Right.
So you need to be able to raise a little bit of extra money in a different avenue to contribute to some of your, again, a term that I don't like, your non-revenue sports. But when you're Marshall, you kind of, or like-minded schools, you have to come up with new and creative ways that also provide a really cool experience for folks that are going to go to that. So this is like a win-win all the way around. Pretty cool event.
Yeah, and I was just with some mutual friends of yours and mine, and also some other people on Saturday at the Coldcats game, and we were discussing how much fun we have at women's sports events here at Marshall. Everyone that I talked to, they were huge softball fans. And they're like, man, I love softball. I love following the team. I love going to the home games and that sort of thing. They loved women's basketball. They got into it really well over the past couple of years, going to the games predating when last year's team blew up. It was before that. They didn't, catch on to the bandwagon at the end of the season, anything like that. They'd already been going a couple of years. And we talked about volleyball. We talked about what women's track and field has been doing, especially cross country, the last couple of years. And we talked about swimming and diving, and we talked about the tennis team and how they've come up and everything. And we were just really focused on talking about how well women's sports are doing here. And we need to fund those teams so they can continue to grow. And this is one of those events. I have seen an increased focus by Lee Smith, President Smith's wife, on things such as this since they've come here. And this is the inaugural. They didn't say one-time event. This is going to be an annual thing now. So I'm here for it. My wife is hoping to go. Of course, we don't know what her schedule is going to look like this far out. We're trying to iron that out, but she is really looking forward to going to this and wanted to take our daughters to it as well.
Yeah, it'll be a cool event, man. It really will.
All right, number 4, women's basketball starts their schedule in November the 4th to be exact, with a game at Toledo as part of the MAC and Sun Belt Conference Challenge.
I saw them bill it as the battle of 2 conference champions to start the season. I mean, if you're Coach Julie Folks, isn't that the way you want to come in? You want to come in hot, playing, against a peer institution conference champion, to prove that you're here to win some games too. I like the matchup. If you're going to be playing in this MAC SBC challenge, you want the 2 champions going head to head, right? And that trickles down to more than just eyes on the game and interest in the game and all that. It's schedule, strength of schedule, and all that kind of stuff, So you get an opportunity to make some noise right out of the gate. You get the opportunity to set the tone, set an early tone for this team with our fans. So I see a lot of boxes that this particular game checks. And I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but I saw that the women's basketball Twitter account posted that, camp was open and the gang was all there. And, they had kind of like a team shot of them in the huddle, talking and everything. It's here, man. It's time. Like it is time to get where the ball meets the floor. And I think everybody in Herd Athletics, at least the fan base, is excited to see what this next evolution of Herd women's basketball is going to look like. It was magical last year. And it's obviously unfair to say it's going to be the exact same because there's so much that's not the same.
Sure.
But I sure do think that the floor on this program was raised in 1 year. So now there's an ample amount of pressure to keep that floor to where it is and not let it dip down farther. But I think a lot of folks are really excited about making another run at another SBC championship and think we have enough pieces in place and the right coaching staff in place to do it.
To remind everyone why this series came about, the Sun Belt Conference realized that basketball was not doing as well as their baseball, their softball, and when they added the 4 teams, us included, in the previous years, the football went up, especially that East Division. Basketball was lagging behind, and they wanted to get the programs up to get more. It's a 1-bid league and everything. They wanted to see what could they do. So they came up with this in concert with the MAC to try to pit RPI higher teams against each other. So later on in the season, they could say, okay, well, now it's going to be this team, and that way maybe elevate both of them by strength of schedule and things like that. So it just helps a little bit with your out-of-conference scheduling. It helps get a little more eyes on the program. It helps with your RPI and strength of schedule, all that sort of thing, and that's why they did it.
Yeah, and luckily for Marshall, it fits a little bit geographically. So
it does.
It makes for an easy game. So, but yeah, there's a lot of pluses now.
Now, the men, second straight year, are not a part of this. And last year, the reasoning was Sun Belt had to pick 2 teams to not be in it to make it work, the scheduling and everything. And Marshall, kind of volunteered and was kind of immediately agreed upon that it made sense. Hey, we're already playing on our schedule 3 MAC teams.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And they were trying to get that multi-team tournament down in the Caymans and do that. I'm not saying that we're going to do another multi-team event this year, but if I'm not mistaken, we already had some teams scheduled in multi-year things that we were going to have some MAC programs on here. So it just made sense for us not to be on there again in the men's team, but or in the men's competition. I would assume that we will pick up and be back in the hunt on that for next year if this series continues.
Yeah, but isn't somebody always going to have to opt out? I'm not saying we will, but there's not the same amount of teams.
That's what I'm saying. Two Sunbelt teams kind of need to not be in it. It's
always,
us. It's us and Louisiana and Monroe this year.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll rotate out and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, it's not even. So that's the thing. It's not like we're refusing to do it, and that's also leaving a MAC team out in the wind as well.
No.
So, all right. Yeah, we fielded a few questions like, why is Marshall not in this again for the second year? And and that was my response. Is like, well, we play MAC teams annually pretty much anyway. So this gives an opportunity to create some history with other Sunbelt schools and MAC schools where there may not be any. And there's plenty of MAC history between Marshall and all teams in the MAC. Most teams in the MAC.
So it makes sense for us to be there geographically. It doesn't make sense to have us play 5 to 6 MAC teams, and let someone else in the Sunbelt not play any, so it kind of worked out that way the first 2 years. Just remains to be seen what the future holds for this series, how far it's going to continue, that sort of thing. Yeah. But one other thing that I said about putting eyes on there is usually this involves some sort of television agreement with ESPN and getting your games televised on these. All right, number 5, Missouri State will be a home game for the 2025 schedule, 9/26/2025. The first game of a 2-game home and home series.
Yeah, it's a game. It's about all I can say. We needed games. We knew we needed games. I've got nothing against Missouri State. It's just, doesn't like get the blood flowing. It's like announcing the Middle Tennessee State series. Like, it was like, well, it's a game, and we need games. And I understand, like, our back was kind of against the wall. It's next season. You have to have something on the schedule. I would much rather be playing a first-year FBS team than have 2 FCS teams on the schedule. So this is kind of like almost got 2 FCS games, but thankfully they're transitioning. Look, they're a decent program. Like, they could win these games. It's not like they're throwaway games. It's just like it doesn't move the needle for me personally. It doesn't mean I have anything against them. There's just so many other teams that I would love to play ahead of them. And that's all, but our back was against the wall, man. I get it. You got to have games. So now we have one less game to worry about for the next 2 seasons, barring that they remain on the schedule. So I don't know that it moves the needle for too many fans, but hey, it's one less worry.
Before I discuss my thoughts on it, I'm going to use a Katie Hudnall quote is, I go to the Marshall games to watch Marshall.
That's right.
And that's the way that we need to look at this is, no matter who that was going to be, we are not going to say, oh man, I'm not going to go. There'll be 5,000 people there and that should be it. No, we need to show up to every game, show up strong, make sure the Joan is loud, and make sure the Joan has that home field advantage that we were known for decades. But my thoughts on this is, you've already taken a little bit of it. It's not just our backs were against the wall. That wall was about to be crumbled down. I mean, with the way scheduling usually goes, I was just looking at a series that was announced for 2025, not for us, but a different team. And that announcement came way back in 2014. And they were announcing that for 2025 and 2026. And not all of them are like that, but we have plenty that we've had that have been 6 years out, 5 years out, 4 years out. And with the change of landscape of how everything has been, now there's a P4 conference and G5 plus whatever, we don't know what's going on with what buzzwords are going to come out with us. Scheduling is very difficult. But we had 2 holes to fill, 25 and 26, and both of those were hard to come by. If you get somebody that's a 2025 and they still have an open spot, they may not want to come here. Do we go there and then we say, okay, well, now we've got 4 home games, now what do we do for our 5th one? But we're going to have 7 away games and 5. No one's going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
So you kind of get down to some slim pickings on what you can take. And this fit 2025 and 2026. And I think that if we had a couple of years buffer, we probably wouldn't have been as eager to take this on if we could have had another chance to put someone else in there. But it's not like when you pick up your PlayStation 5 when NCAA 25 comes out and you say, oh, well, here, I'm going to put Notre Dame's going to return the favor and they're coming to the Joan.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Getting someone to come here is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And getting someone that wants to come here that has an open date is even more difficult when we're talking about next season.
Yeah. How many times under Mike Hamrick as AD did we see these series get signed and Marshall play the away game first?
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of refreshing news. At least we know that if this series goes away after the first series or the first game, that we get the home game.
Right.
Because that's happened so many times to us where we did the away game and then they bought out of our home game or something happened and they couldn't play it. And you're up against it anyway. It's always easier to find an away game, I feel like, because everybody wants a home game. But I understand the situation, but it still doesn't stop me from being like, man, like, dang it.
Sure.
And Missouri State is probably going to be a pretty decently competitive team, right? They are. And I'm not dragging Conference USA. Conference USA has some pretty good teams in it last year. And they're probably going to have a couple of good ones again this year. And we'll see how they fit into that, obviously. But I don't know. It's just a game. Maybe it's an instant classic. And I'm like, man, we got to get them on the schedule again. But because there's really no history for me in the last 25 years,
yeah,
I'm just like, damn it. I wish we could have gotten something better. But
I think everybody, no matter what, wishes we get something better for just about everything out of conference.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to look up here and see what their football stadium looks like.
Okay. Well, while you're looking, is there something else we can be talking about?
Well, no, I've got it right here.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to see. Construction cost was $60,000. So that's not getting a good start, but it opened in 1941. The capacity currently is 17,500. It's been that way since 2014. So it is what it is when we go there. Number 6, Abby Beeman signs a contract with Iceland's, I hope I'm saying this correct, Hamar Por.
That's cool, but
Hamarpor.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
All I know is that the Icelanders are getting a baller, and they're going to be like, wow, I like this scrappy guard that hustles all the time. Good for her, man. Good for her. Good for her for getting a shot. Because I think getting the shot is step number 1, getting the opportunity, and then proving that you can play at that level. Good for her. That's all there is to it. I'm not going to be like, oh, she's going to go out and run that league. I don't know anything about that league. All I know is that one of our all-time greats just got an opportunity to play professionally, and I know that she's going to give it 100% every trip up and down the floor, every one. So that's how you win over a team in an area of the world that you're unfamiliar with. You just become a fan favorite. So I am thrilled to death for Abby Beeman.
Here's what I do know. I know nothing about the Iceland League, but I know that Iceland just got the number 1 passer in the Iceland League, and it's Abby Beeman.
That's true.
She was the best passer in college basketball, male or female, last season.
Yeah.
If anyone disputes that, they weren't watching her games.
Did they just potentially get one in all of Europe? Maybe.
I don't know. Europe's bigger than Iceland, so I'd say she's top 3 without me watching a single game in Europe.
One of.
Yeah,
Not me, just one of.
I'm pretty confident in my picks. I've never been wrong on any of my
Oh, I
picks.
know. I know.
Number 7, track and field announces a record 39 signees. Seems like 12 of them were here this past week in this year's class.
We told you so. I don't know what do you want from me. We told you so. This programs, track and field and cross country, are on a different mission. I mean, 39 signings. Yeah, this is a different era of herd track and field, y'all. So I don't know what I can tell you. Get behind it. It's easy to follow. Everybody knows, what 100 meters is. Everybody knows what the high jump is and the pole vault. Like, it's so easy to follow. This is the Marshall Herd Fandom 101. This is the easiest program to follow and cheer for. We've got other great ones, obviously. Football, people that have no problem cheering for. Basketball and baseball and softball, no problem. You need to work track and field and cross country into your fandom repertoire, because honestly, it costs you nothing. And we have some really, really talented individuals and coaches within that program. Just start. Just start.
Well, the ThunderCast is going to help you get into that, because one of our writers that will debut here in the coming weeks is going to write a little bit. It's going to be a little accompaniment to what Herd Zone just put out. If you go to herdzone.com, they are going to have an amazing breakdown here of these 39 signees. Again, this is 26 male, 13 female in this class, and it spans from National Signing Day, which was November the 8th, through this current month. So they have everything. They have what events they did in high school. They have their times, their personal records and stuff like that. But in the coming weeks to months, we are going to have an accompanying piece over on ThunderCast.online. That's going to have a little more insight into some of these athletes, both in this signing class and maybe some that are returning for this year. So we're going to help you. That's what we're about. We're trying to grow this fan base and make it easier for you to be a fan of all Marshall athletics. So we're going to help you with some breakdowns coming up.
Yeah.
All right, number 8, and this might be the most important one. Happy birthday, Jed Horton.
Hey, happy birthday, Jed Horton. That's right. CEO of Ignite Link, the guy that makes ThunderCast live happen. I mean, all we get to do is talk into the mics. Jed does that too sometimes, but he makes it all happen for us, man. He's an integral part of what we do. You've heard us talk about this. If you've listened to the ThunderCast for any amount of time, at some point you've heard us singing the praises of Jed Horton and the team at Ignite Link.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy birthday, Jed. Man, I didn't know that. Appreciate you, brother. I hope it was a good one. And here's to the next revolution around the sun.
Yeah, so Jed is a constant as far as his Marshall fandom goes. You'll see him constantly chiming in on stuff. We've had him in here as a talking head to fill in for one of us. He has done editing work for us when we needed it. When you were traveling one time and we needed to get a show out, you did part of the show. You traveled. He finished the show. He edited the show. He uploaded the show. He makes ThunderCast Live move. Yep. We have no ThunderCast Live without him. You and I were just talking about doing stuff with a cell phone, and he was like, no. Here,
we can do better than that.
Yeah, you guys don't know what you're doing. You just sit over there and look pretty. I'll take care of all this stuff. And we fail at that too. Yeah. But thank you, Jed, for everything that you do. And I wanted to wrap up our 8 things this week with a shout out to you. And shout out to Ignite Link, who brings you these 5 things every herd fan needs to know this week, each and every week.
Man, I'll tell you what, do me a favor. If you guys are listening to this real quick, just head over to X, if you're on X, and tag at Jed Horton and just send him a happy birthday tweet. That's it. Takes 2 seconds, and show him that herd fans also appreciate him and what he does for us, that we in turn are able to do for you, the herd fan. He's a cool dude, man. So send him all the birthday wishes that you got out there in the Herd universe. Russ, if that's it, I think it's time to talk about some O-line.
It is indeed.
Well, then, let us get into it. Our position group breakdown series continues this week with the uber important offensive line unit for the Marshall Thundering Herd here in 2024. For the second straight week, Russ, not kind, is Phil Steele to the Herd position group ranking. Tied for 9th is this Herd offensive line unit with Southern Miss and Georgia Southern. So we know that there was a lot to replace. We know that there is a revamping is an understatement of this offensive line. So let's kind of get into it. They're coached by Cody Creel, first year with the Herd, replaces Bill Legg. Cody is a former offensive coordinator at Incarnate Word. You've heard us talk about this before in the coaching episode. When he was the OC at Incarnate Word, they set offensive records for pass completions, completion percentage, all-purpose yards, and total points, along with total offense, total points, and touchdowns. This is why we think this particular hire as an offensive line coach is going to be really, really beneficial in a modified air raid transition year. When you look at those record-setting performances, touchdowns, total points, total offense, pass completions, completion percentage, all that stuff says pass, and pass, right? Some of it says run, obviously, but, completions and completion percentage for sure. You hit the portal, guys, and then I'll talk portal out real quick, and I'll let you give me a couple of lines on Coach Creel and then the portal guys. Portal out. We had 5 guys hit the portal. Trent Holler hits the portal and ends up at Memphis. Lloyd Willis, starter from a year ago, in from Florida State last year, 1 year with the Herd, back out of the portal. Started 9 games for the Herd last year, played in all 12. Charlie Veltri and Gage Sampson both hit the portal. Neither saw any action in 2023. And then to round it out, Trent Fraley hit the portal and saw action in 2 games for the Herd. So talk to me real quick about Coach Creel and then the portal out.
Coach Creel has had a lot of commentary that I've read online, and people have personally told me that he's the real deal. Mm-hmm. And his pedigree, I guess it is, with the type of line that we need for this air raid offense, but also his former stop there being offensive coordinator and things like that. I'm really pumped to have him in here, and I think that more than anything, some of that uneasiness can be looked at both ways now, but uneasiness of having to replace the majority of your offensive line. I am weirdly more calm that we're bringing in someone brand new to do that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would look at me and say, well, that's stupid. Don't you at least want the same coach? Well, I think that with going from a different style of offense to this style, I think we 100% needed to have a new coach with all these new players. And I think that that's going to make it easier because everyone is kind of starting from scratch on here, all on the same page. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that this is actually going to be a much improved unit than what we had last year, even with everything that we're replacing. And I think as we discuss this, you'll kind of see why I feel that way.
I think this is a much smaller deal than it would have been 6 years ago. When you can go out and recruit an entire offensive line in an offseason if you need to, you couldn't do that, 5-6 years ago. You just couldn't. Yeah. You'd have 5-6 guys sitting for a year. Mm-hmm. So now you can do that. And I understand what you're saying. Like, some folks might say, oh, you don't want the same coach in there and all this transition. No, not really. I would like to have somebody that has kind of been in this fire before and is undoubtedly going to be on the same page with new offensive coordinator and is absolutely going to have a voice in that room because he's been an offensive coordinator himself. He's been a head coach himself, and he was a position coach most recently in the XFL before coming to Marshall. The offensive coordinator role was a few years ago, and there was some stops in between there, but still doesn't change the fact of what he did when he was there. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. I think you needed a breath of fresh air. It just become apparent that So a change of that particular position group needed to be made, right?
Mhm.
And all the fans were talking about it, and it's not like fans get to decide how the program is run, but if all the fans are noticing it, you know that coaches notice it, and you kind of have to make the move, and we did. And we made the move, and I'm with you. I've heard nothing to the contrary other than Coach Creel is, like you said, the real deal. You don't really need to expand on it, because when in the circles of people that say those type of things, they know what they're talking about. So when they say the real deal, they mean it, right? It's not just fans like read an article and go, "Oh, this guy's the real deal." I mean,
Right.
I can do that, but so yeah, I'm ready for the breath of fresh air. I'm with you. I think cautiously optimistic that this will be a low key better group than last year. For in some categories, but not as good in others, and I'll get into that as well. So 5 in the portal out, 1 in the weird portal in, portal out category, potentially. Might be 2. But one we know for sure is the Barrett Maddox, the guy that came in from Vanderbilt and right back out. So then the portal in, we had 6 guys, potentially 5. And, this is where those 2 tie in. Portal in, Jeremy Jones comes to us from Tulsa, 6'4", 306. Elijah Ellis comes to the herd from Baylor, 6'4", 331. Bryce Ramsey comes to the herd from Southern Miss, 6'1", 327. Sean Marcus Adams is a JUCO guy that comes to the herd, 6'3", 368. And Christian Richter comes to the herd from Lehigh, 6'6", 312. One guy that we've got to talk about that most fans are going to go, "Hey, you forgot a guy." Yeah, Cedric Nicely comes to the herd from Ole Miss, 6'5", 310, but he's not currently showing on the roster. I couldn't find what's going on with that. So he potentially also lands in that transfer in, transfer out in the same semester thing. We just don't know the status of Cedric Nicely, but he did commit to the herd, but he's not on the roster. So you lose 5, Russ. You bring in potentially 6, but most likely looks like 5. And then you have to look and go, okay, did we upgrade overall? If you're bringing in 5, did you upgrade over the 5 that you left or that left? And I would have to say yes, because the 5 that we know that are on the roster all played at their previous stops, and we had 2 guys that saw no action for the herd leave last year, and 1 guy that saw just 2 games. So overall, 5 for 5, I think it is an upgrade. Now, when you're top heavy and talking about, is any of these guys an upgrade over Trent Holler? Is any of these guys an upgrade over Trent Holler and Lloyd Willis? I don't know. That's where the rubber will have to meet the road in in-game season play. But the 5 in, 5 out, I think it's an overall upgrade.
Yeah. I think Cedric Nicely, whether he is on the roster or not, is really, really, really going to tilt the scale. And I don't mean that in any kind of pun on, offensive line size and stuff like that. I just mean that if you're weighing what we lost in the portal versus what we gained in the portal, I don't think that we lost a potential 5 starters for this year. I think that we definitely lost at least 1 because one of them was a starter from last year. But I think the potential is that we picked up at least 2 or 3 that could start this year.
Yeah.
And Nicely being one of those. But we picked up some guys that had some size, that really had some good recruiting out of high school at some high levels. And I think that it's a definite uptick overall.
Yeah. Now, we lost more than 1 starter in the portal. We lost 2 because Trent Holler started and Lloyd Willis started 9 games last year. So, but I still think you're right. I think we brought in more than 2 guys that will potentially be week 1 starters or start more than half the season or whatever data point you want to put beside that. But and the last point we have to talk about is guys that exhausted eligibility or went to the NFL. And of course, the big 2, Ethan Driscoll, now with the Kansas City Chiefs, and Dalton Tucker signed his UDFA deal with I always want to say Baltimore Colts, and I don't know why. Indianapolis Colts.
I don't know, Johnny Unitas, but
two big pieces, both literally and figuratively, that are now notably absent from the herd offensive line from a year ago. So let's talk about projected starters. I think the only one that you can rubber stamp 100% is Logan Osborne
Mhm.
because he started last year. He returns to the line this year. And was an integral part of that line, played multiple positions, but I think maybe we see Logan settle back in at center this
Mhm.
year. And of course, he's a senior,
Mhm.
spent his entire life with the program at Marshall. So
Local
I think
guy.
local kid, Cabell Midland High School. I think he's the only one right now that you can just rubber stamp and go, he's a bona fide starter week 1.
Barring any kind of injury, he
Yeah.
is 100% in there.
Yeah, and he's 6'3", 302. So let's speculate on some other starters. Let's go one for one. Who you got penciled in at left tackle, or do you have them penciled in a position?
Well, so I'm a little bit weird about putting left and right. So let's just go tackle and guard. So
Okay.
tackle, then guard, then guard. I've got Elijah Ellis, the transfer coming in at one of the tackle positions.
Okay. I too have senior Elijah Ellis coming in at one of the tackle positions, 6'4", 331. Now let me do one and we'll see if we match. I'm going to go the other tackle position. I've got Tulsa transfer Jeremy Jones coming in and taking that spot, 6'4", 306. If he's not a tackle for you, do you at least have him in your starting 5?
I do not have him in my starting 5. I do have him significant playing time with his experience, but my other tackle spot, I'm guessing you have this guy at guard. I've got Jalen Slappy.
I do have Jalen Slappy as one of my starting 5. He is. I've got him penciled in at right guard. Jalen Slappy Jr., 6'4", 311 pounds, was just raved about in numerous occasions by Coach Huff in many different ways, from playing to changing his body composition, his body type, his look, everything. So I think it's another homegrown, like in-program guy that you look at and go, he's going to get a spot. This could be his year. So, and then I have penciled in Bryce Ramsey, 6'1", 327, senior transfer from Southern Miss. Is Bryce on your starting 5?
He is. I've got him as a guard. Bryce Ramsey, I have him coming in. And I don't know why, I have these others. You've now given both your guards. Is that correct? I have Tariq Montgomery, who's saw more time at tackle. I have him in at guard.
Yep, potentially a youngster that's going to make the leap this year. Another in-program guy, been here for a couple of years now, so I can see that. Obviously, I can see that. But I think here's why I did I went the way I went, is because if you look down the 5 that I rolled out, it's senior, 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 junior, senior. And I don't think you transfer in somewhere to not have a legit shot to play. So unless they just come in and just flat get beat out or get injured, I feel like it's going to be all those seniors that transferred in that are going to get that initial shot. But of course, across my starting 5, I gave you all the heights and weights, and that breaks down to an average across my starting 5 of 6'3", 315 and some change. Not too bad. You're still missing that big old, 6'8" guy that we've had for a couple of years. But the caveat to that is you've also got to be pretty agile in a pass blocking, potential pass heavy offense. And we've seen that the holding penalty just kills the herd and has killed them for a number of years. So
it's interesting you bring that up because I did not have him in my starting 5, but I want to talk about Isaac Clary from Gallipolis because he is 6'8" in some publications, 6'7" in some others, over 300 pounds, was also a standout basketball player.
Yep.
I'm going to say that that's pretty agile to me. I have seen some power forward / centers that were offensive linemen that were not agile at all, but they also weren't getting rave reviews for their basketball play and their honorable mention in, their league and division and stuff like that for all state and all county and all region and all that stuff. So I am really looking forward to seeing how he does this fall camp. I'm not suggesting that he 100% beats someone out, especially a senior as a redshirt freshman. But that's one of those things, man. You play your best 5, and if he has that footwork and agility, and at 6'8", the leverage that he needs and everything, and the size, he's a very intriguing prospect for me at one of the tackle spots.
Well, let's not forget that these guys are going to go head to head with Marshall's defensive line, which we think is a strength for this team.
Mm-hmm.
So every day in practice, they're going to go up against some of the better defensive linemen in the entire Sun Belt Conference. So you're going to get that trial by fire thing, but of course, nothing is going to substitute live game, full speed action. But you look at a game like Stony Brook early in the season, and if we are honestly going to expect Marshall to come in and have no problem. And we thought that last year, we did, and we struggled in week 1 and it was not pretty, but we're expecting not domination, but an easier road to victory against Stony Brook. This is the perfect opportunity to get some of these younger guys in. You're not going to want to play your starters that you expect to go an entire season. You're not going to leave them out there any longer than you have to. So you could potentially see some of these guys, these young guys, getting some early game action. So it looks like the only one that we have different, you said Tariq Montgomery. I say it's going to be Jeremy Jones, but other than that, 4 of our 5 are the same. We might have them mixed around in various positions, but we're pretty like-minded when it comes to it. So let's talk about some of the guys that will be in the rotation. And this is in no particular order. For me, I wrote these guys down, and it's not like, oh, I expect him to be the first one to go in, him to be the second one to go in. None of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little bit more of a youth movement at this point. That's why I'm a little bit more reserved and leaning heavily towards those seniors and juniors. 1 junior and the rest are either redshirt sophomores or redshirt freshmen. The lone junior is new to the program, JUCO guy Marcus Adams, 6'3", 368. So guys, you would expect to see in the rotation at offensive line, the guy you just mentioned, you like him to be a starter, Tariq Montgomery, to me, redshirt sophomore, 6'5", 303. The in the portal, out of the portal, in the positive way for the Herd, redshirt sophomore Eric Meeks, the also star kick returner for Marshall.
Star kick returner. I look for big things for him this year at the kick returning position.
6'3", 303. And then you get down to your another newcomer, redshirt sophomore Christian Richter from Lehigh, again, 6'6", 312. Then the aforementioned redshirt freshman Isaac Clary, 6'7", 334 on the Herd Zone roster. Man, that's a big dude. And to be a basketball player, have that agility, this could be a really nice, I don't want to call him a project, so let's call him a prospect for Coach Krill to really turn into something, formidable, right? You just can't teach 6'7", 334. You can't teach that. So between Coach Krill and what BA are able to do with Isaac, could be something pretty special. Might not be this year, but it could be something in the next couple of years. Could be this year. Who knows? Redshirt freshman Andrew Hancock, 6'3", 282, also on the roster. And last but most definitely not least, another local product from Cabell Midland High School that makes 2 offensive linemen from Cabell Midland on this Herd roster. Redshirt freshman Sean Rouse, 6'3", 270. He was a first-team All-MSAC conference selection in high school. The kid can play. He had some other offers. It's not like he just came here because this was the only opportunity. He had some offers, right? And among those was a Sun Belt Conference foe, James Madison, right? So you got a top-tier SBC East team that's also seeking the services, and Sean Rouse decided, you know what? Forget that noise. I'm staying right here in Cabell County, West Virginia. I'm going to suit up for the Kelly Green and White, and I'm going to make a go of it with the Herd. And, of course, I love that, and I know you love that. So that's basically your 6, 7-ish type guys that you will see in the rotation of the Herd offensive line. There may be some additions late in the game across summer. Who knows? If an injury occurs and they got to find a guy, or if they just want to, if Nicely doesn't make it to the roster and they feel like, we need one more, then you might see a late addition. But for right now, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and I'm, again, not knowing with Cedric Nicely. I mean, I would kind of pencil him in as a good chance at starting, as long as he is going to be on the roster and there's any other issues with injuries or anything like that. I had him kind of penciled in as being in the mix. So this could look drastically different, but I think when you start looking at the overall unit, this is a unit that is built more for pass blocking than it was last year. And I'm here for it, man. You want to talk some strengths of them?
Yeah, I'm ready to get into some strengths. There's just one other note that I've got to make, and it's about Bryce Ramsey. He comes to the herd from Southern Miss, but he spent 3 years at Ole Miss.
Right.
So that's one that I had forgotten about. So you're looking across this potential line for me, and it's power four, power four via G5, and then in-house guy, and then G5 with Jeremy Jones. And I like that connection because Braylon Braxton and quarterback, Tulsa, offensive lineman, Tulsa. It seems like that's another reason you might want to have him there with some familiarity with who may be playing quarterback. But yes, let's move into some strengths of this overall program. This overall room? What is your number one overall strength?
Size.
Okay.
I think we definitely have that. Whether you're looking at what you said your 5 starters were, 315, was that your average on that? Yeah. Versus what we bring in off the bench as well. I think if you took your starting 5 and then you took the next 6 or 7, the next 6 or 7 is going to be bigger in both height and weight than your starting 5. So I think size, we've got a lot to pick from.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, they are running deep in the size category. Mm-hmm. My number one overall strength for this room, this revamped room, is that we went and got portal upperclassmen. You're not trying to just put together a new offensive line with younger guys that aren't as experienced. You went in and got seniors. You went in and got guys that have played a lot of football at this level, multiple years in strength and conditioning programs at their previous stops, all of those things. And now you have the opportunity to pick the best 5 from guys that have a lot of experience already. It might not have been here, but they have live game action experience at the Division I college football level. And there's just no substitute for that. That to me is my number one overall strength. What's your number 2?
Depth, and it goes a lot with that size, is the depth that we bringing in. Someone coming in off the bench and everything, you're not looking like, okay, well, now here comes the 250 pounder that we're trying to get some weight on. Nah, let's bring in the 6'7", 330 pounder. Let's bring in the 6'6", 320 pounder. So we have that depth that I feel like this year legitimately. I feel like there's maybe 8 names on here that we could say, yeah, I could see them as a starter. Yeah. So I think that is providing us some good depth. And over the last couple of years, I just did not feel like we had a lot of depth, that if we had an injury or someone was playing dinged up or whatever, it was noticeable because we really didn't have anybody that we could plug in that was an improvement over someone playing hurt.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. My number 2 overall strength for this room is that Logan Osborne stayed and will anchor this offensive line because he's a third-team All-SBC Conference offensive lineman. He's just too easy to root for. I mean, he's every herd fan as a player. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? It's like you can just see yourself as Logan Osborne, right? If I were an offensive lineman, it's like he fits right in there, man. He's the guy for this time and place. And I think that's a massive strength. A guy that you can rely on that will play hurt, that will do the dirty work, like all the things, man. And this year he gets to be an even more vocal leader of not only that room, but really of an offense, not just his offensive line room, but the offense as a whole. He was doing that last year, and now he gets to do that in a bigger way this year. I just think it's a massive, massive strength that he decided to stay, finish his career at Marshall. And I'm not saying he was thinking about leaving, but like he might have been contemplating just being done with football, So that's a huge strength to me.
Well, I had that as my number 3, and for every single reason that you mentioned there. He brings the experience, he brings the knowledge with the staff, the familiarity and everything. But, it's also someone that we as local fans can root for. We had him and Dalton Tucker on the line last year. Now we still have him. Had he left and we had to replace all 5, that's a drastically different situation than your homegrown guy staying, and you've got him who probably could have went other places, and we have him here. So I have that as my number 3.
Yeah. Well, my number 3 is maybe viewed as a weakness to some folks. But the strength to me is that you get to put together a revamped offensive line that fits the new blocking schemes in this new offense. So you were able to go out and identify guys based on size and experience and skill set to match what you want to do here. So you're not, for lack of a better term, you're not trying to pound square pegs into a round hole. We went out and got round pegs to put into the round hole. So that to me is potentially a big strength, because you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You went out and got spokes for the wheel. And, ultimately it all has to play out on the field. But, from a bird's eye view, given what you were, 2 guys went to the NFL, I think that that Tucker and Driscoll probably could have been effective in their assignments with this type of offensive line. But you went out and got guys that fit what you want to do. And if Cody Creel was in on recruiting a lot of these guys, then you really know that they're going to fit what we're trying to do.
Yeah. It did seem there for a while that we pulled out some guys that either played in Texas or that area in high school, community college, or college, that after Creel was hired, we had some there. So it seems like maybe that's some people he had been in on before, or people that he knows in his network that they'd been in on before. That's it for me for strengths.
All right, well, let's move into weaknesses. I also have a trio of weaknesses.
Same.
I'll let you go first then.
We are replacing a lot. 2 are in the NFL. Another went to Memphis, and then we had another one go. I'm not sure. Did you say where Lloyd Willis went?
No.
Okay. But anyway, losing 4 starters,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a lot, no matter what the performance is. When you are losing 4 starters, that's a lot to replace. Replacing 4 starters, if you didn't bring in anybody on the transfer, that means you've got to move those up. So you got to replenish your bench. No matter what happens, 4 starters is a lot to replace. And that is a lot of new key pieces that are going to have to play as a unit. So for me, that is the number 1 weakness.
Well, my number 1 weakness is replacing 4 of 5 main starters from a year ago, which could potentially lead with offensive line cohesion issues, communication issues. And I'm not sure if there is a position, maybe defensive back, but offensive line, if you get the communication wrong, I'm not sure that it looks worse when the communication is way off, because oftentimes it leads to an unblocked blocker coming, wide open at your quarterback, or, the hole that your running back was supposed to run through is now sealed up because you didn't open the right hole. Maybe the only one worse is defensive back with miscommunication leading to a wide open receiver down the field. So those offensive line cohesion issues could be there early. Really, they could be there all year. Let's obviously hope not. But when you replace 80% of your starting offensive line, that's a point you have to talk about, because it's a very real issue. So will it be? Who knows? But right from the gate, it has to be perceived as the number 1 weakness, at least in our opinion. What's your number 2?
Well, this is kind of hand in hand with that. It's not exactly the same, but the unknown on which 5 will come together in what order to form the best unit. We talked about this a lot last year. I said that, more than anything, this unit has to play together more than any other unit on there, your offensive line. They have to know where they're at all times, who's doing this, who's got that guy, who's picking up this guy, if this guy does that, and that sort of thing, because they have to protect the quarterback and they have to open up running lanes. And which 5 will come together in what order? Does that mean, each of us had Slappy as a starter, but we had him in different positions? I talked about Tariq Montgomery historically playing at tackle, but I had him kind of penciled in maybe at guard. What combination are we going to come up with that is going to be the best for what we want to do with this offense? So that, to me, that unknown as of right now is a weakness.
Well, we've seen that in the past. We've even been able to nail the right 5 guys, but they shuffle them around to figure out the right combination of those 5 guys. So this is always forever until the end of time. Offensive line will have to be a 5 men, 1 mind mindset, because that's how you have to play. You have to play as 5 fingers on one hand, so to speak. So yeah, that's the great mystery. Which 5, and then where do those 5 play? For me, my number 2 weakness is a new offense means new concepts to master, which of course also leads back to cohesion and communication. But it's the less physical side of it. Like, you have to master potential new blocking schemes, new blocking assignments. You have to know that, and you have to know it in a snap, less than in a snap. You have to know it immediately on where to go and where everybody else is going. So that's why I think it's important that you went out and found round pegs for your round hole, is because you hope that the baseline level of familiarity with some of these assignments is already there. You don't want to be learning from ground zero and having to be teaching certain techniques that a guy that's been in the system 2 or 3 years already knows this kind of stuff. Yeah. So that is a potential weakness, but one that I feel better about because of who you bring in, to fill those roles. What is your number 3?
Well, it is a new season, but pass blocking was a weakness last year, a very big weakness, and this is an air raid offense. So it has to drastically improve more than anything. We last couple of years put up some really good running numbers, but our pass blocking, there were times when quarterback didn't have time to do anything.
Right.
And no matter who our quarterback is, they're going to be a starter for the first time for the herd, as far as like the full-time starter.
Right.
Pennington got 2 starts last year.
Yeah, even he split time. Even he split
time. So no matter who it is, they're going to be a starter for the first time. And that's a weakness for me. I do think that we can improve, but new units, new people, but right now that is a weakness.
Yeah, and it won't surprise you to know that my number 3 overall weakness is kind of in the same vein, but I get a little bit more specific, right? My number 3 weakness is the fact that Rasheen Ali is not on the roster any longer, and that you could potentially be starting a less mobile quarterback than a year ago adds pressure to an offensive line, right? To be able to sustain blocks. If you've got a guy that all he can do, well, not all he can do, but is a less elusive and is more of a pocket passer, that puts a lot more pressure on your offensive line, because now you can't rely on the escapability of your quarterback. And the greatness of Rasheen Ali just makes up for a lot for an offense. It takes a load off of an offensive line a lot, because he was just so great, right? So there's going to be more pressure. We think that there are backs on the roster that will be productive, but still, there's only one Rasheen Ali, right? And until we didn't know what to expect out of Kalen Laburn in the preseason. We didn't know, right? And we were like, oh man, now Rasheen's down. Like, what are we going to see? Well, it turned out Kalen Laburn was great, but still, until you see that, you have to say, yeah, Rasheen Ali we knew what he could do. We knew the moves he could make. We knew the holes he could fit through, and his explosiveness and game changeability. So all of these things, coupled with the fact that you may be starting more of a traditional pocket passer with less escapability, adds pressure to your offensive line and causes them to have to raise their production more so than last year. And you're right. Pass protection it struggled, and it cannot struggle this year in an air raid offense.
Yeah. KD, I've got a little bit here. We're not known for our investigative journalism. We basically, talk about things that and everything. But I did try to verify about Cedric nicely, and he will be on the roster as of right now. That's it's just he's not on the Herd Zone roster right now, but he is on the team. And there's no portal window that would be open. So as of right now, he is on the team.
Well, that's great. Then that really means that, your 6 in, 5 out really has upgraded over just a 5 for 5, which I felt was an upgrade anyway. So that's good. And that also potentially does change both of our starting 5s. I don't know that it will, but
it would mind.
he's late to the game. You've got guys that are already going through spring and working with Coach Krill and all that kind of stuff. So he would be late to the game, but still, it's a good problem to have. Let's move into those 4 questions, shall we? Who is your biggest loss from the unit from a year ago?
I've got Dalton Tucker. I know that he went the undrafted route, and we had a different guy be the guy that was drafted outright above him. But for me, man, I've got Dalton Tucker, and I think a lot of that was we had a lot of penalties on Driscoll. And I don't think all of them were his fault. I think that you remember the hack-a-shack analogy that we went through, that because of his sheer size, they're like, well, I mean, he pancaked that guy. He was obviously holding, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I actually spoke to his father about that and everything. And I said, I kind of feel like because of his size, 6'9", whatever, that people were just looking at a reason to throw a flag on him.
Right.
But he did have, and this was self-admitting, he had some false start problems and things like that. And then he did have some holds and stuff. I feel like Dalton Tucker had that more rounded game of, you rarely saw him with the penalties, and he and Driscoll both were solid protectors. I have Dalton Tucker as the hardest to replace.
Yeah, and I went back and forth, right? Because I weighed the same things that you'd weighed. And then I come down to the point and I'm like, and both of them become NFL guys, right? So what the hell do you do? And then I just decided, you know what? Neither one of them were going to be on the roster anyway because they both exhausted eligibility. And I just went, you know what? Who could have been on the roster? Trent Holler. So I think that to me is the biggest loss because he is still playing college football and he could have still been on our roster and chose to hit the portal. And he was kind of just like what you're talking about with Driscoll and Tucker. He's just a go to work kind of guy and did his job. And he was the guy that could have potentially been here alongside Logan Osborne. And now you're only talking about having to replace 60% of your offensive line,
right,
which is a much better scenario than replacing 80%.
Plus his versatility you just talked about. He played center and he played guard.
That's right. So I could make a legitimate argument for any of those 3 guys. Mm-hmm. But I'm just choosing Trent Holler because he's still playing college football, whereas the other 2 are not.
That's a good point.
Who are you most excited to see here in 2024 from this O-line room?
For me, it's Isaac Clary, and he's somebody that I don't at this moment picture being a starter, but I really want to watch his development and see how he pushes to become that starter either next year or maybe even later in this year. And it all goes back to that agility, the size, everything. You talk about losing Driscoll at 6'9". Here's someone 6'7", 6'8", that's put on some weight since he got here from what his recruiting profile says. And he made, I don't think it was even honorable mention. I think he made the all first team. It wasn't for the entire state of Ohio, but I think he made something for basketball in Ohio. For the entire state. It's just really, really intriguing to me at his size and his agility and everything. And he's a local-ish kid. You can be in Gallipolis in 45 minutes or so from here.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I'm not playing any bones about it. I'll be honest with you. All these other guys are intriguing and Portal Inn guys are intriguing and this, that, and the other. I'm just flat most excited to see Logan Osborne. Anytime I've got a guy that has stayed with my program and has chosen to remain here and from beginning to end with the herd, I think that's the guy that I am probably always going to be most excited to see. As my personal fandom reward for their loyalty to the program that I love so much, in a world where they don't really have to do that anymore, that means something to me, and it's always going to mean something to me. We talked about this relentlessly with Owen Porter last year, and he did the same thing. And we talked about this in earlier episodes where you say, now you can become just a campus legend, a program legend, by being a high-performing, multi-year starter, all-conference type player that begins and finishes your career at the same school. And Logan Osborne is the next player that is able to do that for Marshall. I am
Yeah.
most excited to see Logan Osborne in his final year with the Herd. I hope he goes out a first-team all-conference selection, all of the things, because he's just so much about what is still right with college football, in my opinion.
That's a good point. Good pick. Love it.
Who is your breakout player for 2024?
For me, it is Jalen Slappy, and I think that how he came on last year and what we've heard Coach say, and he has changed his body. He's dropped some weight and improved his mobility, while also gaining in strength and muscle and everything. I think he is just poised to be that guy to take the next leap up. That last year he worked his way in. I felt like when he came in, we improved as a unit, shored up some of those problems that you were talking about of like, hey, we're letting somebody in the backfield. I feel like that he worked with that team very well when he came into the starting lineup. So I look for him to take that next leap and do a lot more.
Well, unsurprisingly, maybe Jalen Slappy is also my breakout offensive lineman for the Herd this year, for all of the reasons that you just said, and for all of the praise that he's received over the past number of years in several different aspects. I think it's his time. I think it is his time to get on the big stage in a consistent way and be that week one starter, solidify his role wherever it may ultimately land on the offensive line. I just think he's the breakout guy this year. Marshall needs another star, right? They do. They need another star on the offensive line alongside Logan Osborne, who fans just love. And I think they want to lean towards a guy that has been here in the program and has worked his way up and has worked his way into the starting lineup or into the lineup during a game and performed. And like you said, the unit got better seemingly when he was in there. I think he checks all those boxes. He's my breakout guy. And I think by the end of the year, he's the guy on the offensive line that Marshall is going to talk about, man, next year Slappy's coming back and who are we going to get to accent what he does and all this kind of stuff. Because remember, Logan Osborne will exhaust eligibility, and you've got a quartet of seniors that are going to be exhausting eligibility that we think will be starters or early rotation guys. Slappy's a junior. So he's my breakout guy. Who's your MVP when it's all said and done?
Logan Osborne.
Same.
Yeah.
For every reason I just said.
Everything we've already talked about, he's the MVP. He's the leader. He's been here the longest. He's the local guy. He's the lone starter that's returning. He's going to be that quarterback of the offensive line, in my opinion. And being the center helps with that too. To be that anchor. He's the MVP.
Yep, me too. All the things, everything. Give me Logan Osborne in a landslide. I hope that we have 5 guys vying for, who was the most important? But my knee-jerk reaction, again, is to lean towards the guy that has just been there, done that, and performed for us and chose to remain. There's just no substitute for that. Just like there's no substitute for live-action gameplay, there's no substitute for those intangibles, that the factors that I hold personally important off the field. Well, that's it. Let me ask you one final question. I snuck it in last time just as a comment, but I think I want to ask you, overall, do you think, based on just what we know right now, that this unit is better than it was a year ago?
I do, and I'm glad you did ask me that, because I wanted to talk about that, but I didn't have it in those 4 questions there. And I think that we had some Herd all-timers here over the past couple of years. 2 of them going to the NFL, that tells you a lot, that if an NFL team thinks that you're at least worth getting an undrafted free agent spot for and or drafting you, I think that they think highly of you. I just feel like that for whatever reason, the 5 individuals did not make a cohesive unit. So I think that we may not have the huge guys that we say right away is like, oh, well, this guy's a pancake machine. This guy's not allowed a sack all year, that sort of thing. I think that we're going to have 5 playing better pass blocking than we did last year. So I feel like that is going to be the key to make us a better unit. We are only as good as our offensive line is. Your offense is not going to be good if you have a porous offensive line that is not opening up holes for your running game, is therefore taking away your play action pass and everything, and not protecting your quarterback, and he has to immediately make a bad decision. So I think that we are going to have improved play this year with who we have brought in, and I feel like it's kind of good that we had this palate cleanser to where we come in, we got new coach, we got new players coming in, and a new blocking scheme, new system, all that, throwing the ball a little bit more of a ratio than what we did run versus pass in the previous couple of years. I think that perfect storm is going to allow everybody to start from scratch and have a better overall unit.
I certainly hope so. I too think this unit has notched up from a year ago, and that's hard to say when you got two guys from your line that went to the NFL. But the ask of the offensive line is going to be different this year than it was a year ago. And I think that there are more pieces in place to answer that ask than last year.
Yeah.
You know, and you might, I hope there are some more dominant offensive linemen. And you talked about there were some all-timers in recent history, and there were, man. You know, the guys like Alex Millette just don't grow on trees. Like, they don't come through your program all the time. The Will Ulmers, these Iron Man guys that start 56 games in a career or something like that, and just are always out there performing for you. You know, Logan Osborne has been doing a pretty good job as a center, but Marshall had a freaking run of centers that were all conference perennially, annually, all conference centers, guys like Chris Jaspers and Levi Brown, and these great offensive linemen. And hopefully in this portal era, we start to see success at plugging those guys in and having to revamp a line. It's just really hard. I just ripped off a bunch of guys that were program long recruits. They came here, developed here, and played here, and exhausted eligibility here. So that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. And you're right. Nothing is more important really than the offensive line from an offensive standpoint. You have to be able to block. You have to be able to open holes. You have to be able to create time for your skill position players. And if you can't, you are sunk. So I think we've notched up based on what will be asked of them. And I'm going to leave it at that. Do you have anything else?
No, I think this was a very good comprehensive breakdown. I just do really want to say that the knowledge that Cedric Nicely will be in there, if people will listen to this and what we said earlier, you know, we were kind of hedging our bets that he's not on the roster on Herd Zone, so let's act like he's not going to be on there with our starting five. I think that really drives home that we're going to have a really good a good problem to have as far as who's going to start versus who's going to come off the bench, size, experience. Let's not forget who we said Cedric Nicely came from was Ole Miss, and Bryce Ramsey was there, you know, for 3 years as well. They were heavily recruited out of high school.
Well, but it's also a Lane Kiffin offense, and you know what that looks like. So that's why I feel like these things will translate pretty well.
Yeah.
But if you got nothing else, then, you know, I'll tell you now, you can, next week's episode, the position group breakdown series will continue. We'll be talking about the secondary in what you indicated earlier is the first episode of season 4 of the ThunderCast. Can you freaking believe it? So if you got nothing else, take us out of here.
Yeah, whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Jack, or whether you see us at the Cam, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the ThunderCast. Don't forget, next week, it is the secondary. We'll see you next week. Later.